Hi guys, it's Joey and I talk about all things spooky and strange, and sometimes I paranormal investigate. I hope a lot of you liked my last video on these. I am so far enjoying researching and understanding these people's stories, so hopefully you guys keep watching, and yeah, let's get into the next story that I'm going to talk about. Today is going to be about something that many have probably heard of, especially in the community I'm in, the Los Feliz murder mansion. Of course, I know that I'm seemingly doing a lot of stories in California. What can I say? They have a lot of interesting stories, and this is one where I know a lot of people in my field would go paranormal investigate, and I believe a lot of people visit this place occasionally. In north of Los Angeles, Los Feliz is a very wealthy area where people want to purchase their forever home, and you have to have a lot of money for it. The Los Feliz mansion is specifically located at 2475 Glendower Place. I obviously wouldn't give the location if it wasn't already public news, because a lot of people seem to go look at the place and I think sometimes break in. I know sometimes break in. So it's already public information, otherwise I wouldn't give the location. Before we get into this tragedy that happened at the Los Feliz murder mansion, let's talk about the previous owners that owned it. Let's get into the discussion and history of the Perelson family. Dr. Harold Perelson was born February 1st, 1909. He was from Queens, New York. He was the oldest of 4 children, and his parents immigrated to America from Eastern Europe. Obviously, they immigrated for reasons like the Imperial Recession. Harold was known as a very intelligent kid. He was like the straight-A student. He enjoyed school and he was very ambitious. And after high school, he ended up deciding to attend medical school, which everyone knows getting into medical school is not the easiest. After he attended medical school, he was like, I have ambition, I have bigger dreams for myself. I'm gonna move to Inglewood, California, which is southern Los Angeles area. I'm going to pursue my dreams in the medical field. He did end up getting a job at a physician's office, and you know, he did a lot of great things. He was publishing papers, he was speaking at places about his work. He started publishing papers in the field of neurology, and he also had a very well-known clinical report that was respected by many. It was called the electrocardiogram in familial periodic paralysis, which ended up being published in the American Health Journal magazine, which was published in June 1947. He ended up becoming the assisted head of cardiology at UFC. So this was a well-respected man. He was doing what only others could dream of. You know, during this time, I don't know what time period, but after graduation, I do know he met his wife, who is named Lillian Silva, whose parents also immigrated to the United States. They ended up falling in love, you know, the typical romance, and having 3 children. Their 3 children's names were Jude, Joel, and Debbie. They decided at the time it was time for them to buy their forever home, and they found the perfect place. He was making a lot of money at this time, and Lillian was a homemaker, so she just supported the family household. So Harold decided, I want this forever home. I want to live in this really nice mansion. Let's go purchase this mansion in Los Feliz. which is a great neighborhood. I actually would love to live there. They ended up buying the home for about $60,000, which I still wish we could get it for that much in today's world. $60,000, of course, was way more back then, but what? A home for $60,000? You know, this was a Spanish style home. There was so many rooms to this place. The home was built by Harry S. Shoemaker in 1925, and it was designed by architect Harry E. Weiner. The 3-story home had 4 master bedrooms, 3 bedrooms in general, a library, a ballroom with a bar, a 3-car garage. You know, just like the perfect place for practically anyone. After Shoemaker died in 1932, it was, you know, tossed around a few times between people until the Perelson family purchased it in the 1950s, which was the early 1950s. So we've established that Harold is quite an amazing doctor. He can do a lot of things, and he was also known for being an injection specialist. Now let's go back a little bit in the moment of December 3rd, 1938, where he filed a patent for a medical device that he invented, which seemed to me like a syringe. It reduced spillage and also contamination when injecting. He spent approximately 10 years working on this device. So that's a really long time for an invention. You know, he was a perfectionist. He was an overachiever, so that doesn't surprise me at all. He ended up meeting this man named Edward Shoestack. You know, he talked himself up big. He was like, I can market your product. I can help you get this out. We can make a lot of money. He was hustling. So Harold ended up agreeing with Edward and was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's split the profits 50-50, which Harold was being a little too nice, because I don't necessarily think that Edward would deserve 50% of the other half. You know, Harold had spent so much time on this device. I feel like that wasn't a good deal for Harold, but you know, he was being generous, I suppose. Harold and Lillian were ecstatic about the idea. You know, an invention, I mean, that's amazing. How many people invent something that's, you know, used in today's world? So Harold and Lillian were ecstatic. They both put approximately $24,000 into this deal, and they wanted to see where it would go. And $24,000 back then was like $250,000 in today's money. So throughout this situation, he kept on trying to perfect his invention until 1952, when things took a turn for the worst. He ended up finding out that Edward Shoestack was scamming him and pretty much took his idea and ran with it for himself, which is tragic. I mean, imagine putting all your hard work for over 10 years and your hard-earned money. This is your life investments. This is your idea, and someone taking that idea and screwing you over. On July 21st of 1952, Harold decided to file a complaint against Edward, discussing how he scammed him and how he had sold the rights to his product to somebody else, which was through some BS company name. After that, Harold sued Edward for approximately $100,000, and he ended up winning the case. However, he did not get all the money that he asked for. He only got over about $23,000, which obviously did not cover Harold and Lillian's finances when it came to putting in all the money and effort into this product. Of course, they had a lot of money, but still, like, when you're trying to invest, you're trying to make a lot of money, and you're trying to do something great in the world, you want to make a profit no matter what. So regardless of being rich, poor, nobody likes to see a loss in their life. And you know, at this point, he was kind of struggling financially, although they didn't really, you know, spend money like that. They spent like they weren't struggling. Aside from that, on November 3rd, 1957, his daughter Jude took her siblings, Joel and Debbie, for a car ride in her dad's 52 Oldsmobile. Well, after taking this joyride at a crossroads, it seemed that they ended up getting into a wreck. They ended up getting minor injuries, but the injuries were enough to get medical attention, but they weren't life-threatening injuries. When you're getting a wreck, which is an awful experience for anyone who's been in one. The other woman was named Eleanor Keller. She had claimed that Jude ran a red light. You know, this is the common argument. Most people are not going to blame themselves, obviously, because nobody wants to pay and the insurance goes up, all of that fun stuff, which is the fun part of being an adult, you know? So because Eleanor was like, oh yeah, Jude ran the red light, it was not my fault, and it upset Harold. He was like, yeah, this is not okay, I am angry. He ended up suing her for approximately $50,000 in damages, and he won the case. Yet again, he was not awarded the money that he initially won. He ended up only getting enough to cover the medical bills. And honestly, in my opinion, would I say that he was possibly desperate, looking for an out to make more money because of what he's been through? I think that's possible, but who knows? Maybe Eleanor actually was the one at fault. But I think Harold probably took the opportunity because financially he was not the best off. I mean, imagine like going through all these financial struggles as you're purchasing this gorgeous home and you're like, I finally am living my life, but that's how life is. They're like, hold up, wait, stop, the brakes. No pun intended. It just seems like this kind of thing just happens to everyone at the worst time possible. If anyone's experienced life, you know this is how it is. Anyone that would look at the Perelson family, they are lovely people. It feels like the typical family that's wealthy, you know, the kids are popular in school, they are successful. You never really know what happens to people when they go through these situations. I can imagine the financial stress can take a toll on your mental health, which leads me to the horrific night on December 6th of 1959. This is where it gets a little dark. Around 5 a.m. in the early morning, 18-year-old Jude woke up to a terrible headache. Her head was hurting and she realized that her head was bleeding and her father was standing over her with a ball-peen hammer. Jude started screaming and fighting Harold off, obviously, as anyone would if they're in that situation. She ended up fighting her father off and went running down the stairs and frantic because, I mean, imagine, you can't be in your right mind for one. Your head just got hit, you know, you're bleeding, you're in shock. So she's frantically trying to get out of the house and to her neighbor's home, which is a typical thing you would do. You know your neighbors and you're like, okay, let me get the closest help I can possibly get. The two youngest children, who were Joel, who was 13 years old at the time, and Debbie, who was 11 years old, woke up because of the noise, and Harold said, go back to sleep. This is just a nightmare. And they were terrified and obviously ran out of the mansion. Who wouldn't be terrified? Who would go back to sleep after all the situations that were happening at that time? They were unharmed and yeah, they luckily made it out. Jude stumbled to their neighbor, Marshall Ross, and they ended up calling the police immediately. Jude had survived the attack. The ambulance came and took her in for skull fractures and to make sure everything was okay. There was an article in the Los Angeles Times in 1959 where Marshall Ross entered the mansion after the situation occurred. He said that Harold was angry and Marshall said, "Go sit down, go take a rest." He surprisingly listened. I mean, I don't know how Marshall was so calm doing that, but maybe he knew like something was just off mentally. When the police got to the mansion, they found the body of Lillian Perelson, his wife, who was 42 years old at the time, and she had been bludgeoned to death. It was said that Harold slept with a hammer for protection generally, so, I mean, I don't even know what to say. Like, it's tragic. They found Harold in one of the bedrooms after that, on one of the beds, dead. And it was said that he killed himself. It was said that the coroner said that he overdosed on barbiturates, and newspapers said it was acid, but that's what the coroner said it was. Next to him was, of course, the hammer and an empty bottle of pills and a copy of the book that was open to a passage that said, "Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within the forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost," which apparently hinted at some instability financially. And, you know, he was a smart man. Of course he read books. It does seem like maybe there was some mental illness with this at this point, or the medication mix. Who knows what really was the reason for him to do this to his entire family, you know? This was a guy who did not seem like an awful person. And even Jude talked about their financial problems to their aunt through writing letters. So after the rampage, obviously the children were told to live with the closest of kin and did not return to the mansion. I'm glad that the children made it out, but the fact that his wife was murdered is quite tragic. Imagine being a child and losing everything, and probably not even any financial help at all from their parents, because as it seemed they were no longer really financially well off. The property ended up being sold to Emily and Julian Enriquez, but they never moved in. It seemed like they just kept dropping things off there, which doesn't make sense to me. They also didn't move any of the Perelson's family belongings out. They still had Christmas presents that were never opened, and a lot of things that were left in the home. When Emily Enriquez passed in 1994, her son Rudy ended up inheriting the home. And I suppose because of the story, he was like, I don't even want to move in there. I don't want to stay there. I definitely would move in there, you know, but also look at what I do. So I guess everybody feels differently. Maybe I would feel differently if I stayed a few nights. So the place started to decay, and obviously repairs weren't being made. It was just kind of sitting there and going to waste. And the city started to intervene, and they were like, you've got to like fix this property up, make it a livable situation. You know, Rudy was asked about if there were any paranormal occurrences. He said, not that I know of. And I mean, if you never went there, I can imagine that you wouldn't know of any paranormal occurrences. But people tend to make things more than what they are in the paranormal. And I'm sure if it happened, it was a rare moment. And that's how paranormal is. Rudy Enriquez ended up dying in 2015, which obviously meant the home was going to be sold again. Actually, Gloria Allred's daughter, who is a wonderful woman, first of all, her daughter attorney Lisa Bloom bought the house with her husband. It was about $2.2 million, which is far from the original price of $60,000 for obvious reasons. The economy, things just cost more. And they wanted to renovate and make the property good again, which I feel like, yeah, that should have happened a long time before. And eventually Lisa Bloom ended up selling this house for the same amount that she bought it for unknown reasons. There wasn't really anything I could find. The new buyer is from a company which was represented by Lux Manor Custom Home Builders. Not entirely sure what's going to happen to this home. There's really no plans right now. I hear rumors that it's going to be destroyed at some point. And that is the final mystery of this murder mansion that was a complete tragedy. Let me know in the comments below if you would buy this house. If you could afford this house, would you buy it? Would you renovate it? Would you live in it? Would you use it as an investment? What would you do with this house if you could buy it? Or do you feel like it has some sort of energy that is attached to it and no one should live in homes like that? Do you think they should be destroyed after murders happen in them? I would like to know what you think about this story. Hopefully you will be here for the next true crime case. I will see you in the future.